September 1911, Jolo Island, Philippine-American War. Lieutenant Gordon Johnston empties his service revolver into a charging Moro Juramentado warrior at 15 meters. 6 shots, center mass, all hits. The warrior keeps charging. Johnston fires his last round at 10 meters. The bullet strikes the warrior's chest. He doesn't slow. At 5 meters, Johnston reaches for his saber. Too late. The crisp blade opens his throat in a single slash. The lieutenant dies with his blood pooling in the volcanic soil, whilst the warrior, carrying 7.38 caliber bullets in his torso, advances to kill 2 more soldiers before finally collapsing. The reinforcements who arrive minutes later count the wounds. 7 hits, center mass. The warrior's body shows minimal blood loss from the entry wounds. The small, low-velocity bullets simply didn't deliver enough trauma to stop a man whose entire culture had prepared him for this moment. His bindings, wrapped tight around his torso and limbs, had restricted blood flow. His ritual preparation included drugs that dulled pain. His religious conviction told him that dying whilst killing infidels guaranteed paradise. The .38 caliber revolver, standard issue to American forces, was designed to stop a European soldier in conventional warfare. It was utterly inadequate against an enemy who had spiritually and physically prepared himself to absorb bullets and continue fighting. This scene repeats itself dozens of times across the Moro province. In Mindanao, in Basilan, in Jolo, American soldiers fire their revolvers into charging warriors and watch in horror as the bullets fail to stop the attack. The reports pile up on desks in Manila, then Washington. Soldiers are dying because their sidearms cannot generate sufficient stopping power against a determined enemy. The U.S. Army needs a solution. The crisis is undeniable. Men are being killed whilst carrying loaded weapons, dying because those weapons lack the power to neutralize an attacker before he closes the distance. But the solution already exists. In a workshop in Utah, a lean, soft-spoken man named John Moses Browning is finalizing the design of a pistol that will solve this problem. More than that, it will define combat handgun design for the next century and beyond. He calls it the Model 1911. The immediate crisis in the Philippines merely confirmed what military authorities had suspected for years. The .38 caliber revolver was insufficient for modern warfare. Field reports from officers described enemies absorbing multiple hits and continuing to fight effectively. Captain John Pershing, stationed in Mindanao, documented case after case of Moro warriors sustaining what should have been fatal wounds, yet fighting on for minutes, sometimes hours. One report described a Juramentado who had been shot 14 times with .38 caliber rounds before finally expiring, not killed in the moment, not stopped by the bullets. He simply continued until blood loss eventually shut down his body. The pattern was undeniable in Washington. The War Department convened boards to study the problem. They conducted ballistic tests firing into cadavers, into animal tissue, into ballistic gelatin. The conclusion was clear and irrefutable. The .38 caliber round lacked sufficient mass and velocity to create the temporary wound cavity necessary to incapacitate a human target reliably. The military needed a pistol chambered for a larger, heavier bullet. The requirement was specific: 45 caliber minimum. The cartridge must deliver significantly more energy than the existing .38 caliber round, and the weapon itself must meet demanding criteria. It must function in mud, dust, extreme heat, and freezing cold. It must be simple enough for conscripts to field strip, and it must demonstrate absolute reliability. No jams, no malfunctions, no failures. John Moses Browning doesn't look like a revolutionary. Born in 1855 in Ogden, Utah, he grew up in his father's gun shop, learning the craft by watching and doing. Jonathan Browning, his father, was himself a skilled gunsmith who had designed firearms for Mormon settlers heading west. Young John built his first firearm at 13, a rifle constructed from scrap metal and salvaged parts. By his 20s, major manufacturers were purchasing his designs. Winchester bought his single-shot rifle design in 1883. His lever-action rifle designs became the foundation of Winchester's commercial success. He could have spent his career refining existing technology, making incremental improvements to lever actions and revolvers, collecting royalties whilst other men manufactured his increasingly obsolete designs. Instead, Browning sees the future. Whilst contemporaries perfect lever action mechanisms and revolver designs, he experiments with semi-automatic operation. He understands that the future belongs to firearms that use the energy of firing to cycle the action automatically. By the 1890s, he's developing semi-automatic pistols, whilst most manufacturers are still wedded to revolvers that require manual cocking between shots. Other designers don't understand what he's attempting. The mechanical challenges seem insurmountable. How do you harness recoil energy to extract a spent cartridge, cock the hammer, and chamber a fresh round, all in a fraction of a second, reliably and safely? By 1900, Browning has developed a working prototype based on a principle he calls short recoil operation. The concept is elegant. When the pistol fires, the barrel and slide remain locked together for a brief moment, moving rearward as a unit. This absorbs the initial recoil energy. Then the barrel stops whilst the slide continues rearward, extracting the spent casing and cocking the hammer. A recoil spring then drives the slide forward, stripping a fresh cartridge from the magazine and chambering it. The barrel and slide lock together again, ready for the next shot. The entire cycle happens faster than human perception can follow. This operating principle becomes the foundation for virtually every semi-automatic pistol designed in the century that follows. But in 1900, it's revolutionary. Browning partners with Colt's Patent Firearms Manufacturing Company to refine the design for military specifications. The challenges are immense. The pistol must be reliable enough to stake a soldier's life on. It must be simple enough for minimally trained troops to maintain in field conditions. It must function when covered in mud, when frozen, when the barrel is overheated from sustained firing. It must be soldier-proof. Troops will abuse it, neglect it, and depend on it when everything else has failed. The U.S. Army specifies requirements for the new cartridge as well. The .45 automatic Colt pistol round that Browning and Colt developed fires a 230-grain bullet at approximately 830 feet per second. The energy transfer is massive compared to the .38 caliber revolver. The large heavy bullet creates a temporary wound cavity that incapacitates through hydrostatic shock. The slower velocity means the bullet transfers its energy to tissue rather than over-penetrating. The tactical advantages of the new design are comprehensive. The pistol features a grip safety that must be depressed for the weapon to fire, preventing accidental discharge. A thumb safety provides an additional level of control. The slide locks back when the magazine is empty, giving the shooter a visual and tactile indicator that the weapon needs reloading. The single-stack magazine holds 7 rounds, giving the shooter 8 rounds total with 1 in the chamber. The grip angle and controlled recoil make accurate rapid fire possible even for shooters with minimal training. The adoption trials run from 1907 to 1911. 6 manufacturers submit pistols for testing. The competing designs include revolvers and semi-automatics from Colt, Smith & Wesson, Savage, Noble, Webley, and others. The tests are merciless. The Army wants to know what happens when everything goes wrong. The pistols are fired thousands of rounds. They're buried in sand and mud, frozen, overheated, and fired without cleaning. The testers deliberately abuse the weapons, trying to induce malfunctions. They drop them, strike them against hard surfaces, and subject them to environmental torture that exceeds anything likely to occur in actual service. The final torture test occurs on the 3rd of March 1911. Browning personally supervises. The Colt pistol fires 6,000 rounds over the course of 2 days. The barrel overheats repeatedly. The solution is pragmatic. They dunk the pistol in a bucket of water to cool it, then continue firing. The observers watch for malfunctions, jams, misfires, failures to extract, failures to feed, failures to eject. Anything that would render the weapon inoperative in combat. Nothing. The Savage entry, by comparison, suffers 37 malfunctions during the same test protocol. The decision is unanimous. On 29 March 1911, the United States Army officially adopts Browning's design as the Model 1911. The Navy follows immediately. The Marine Corps adopts it. The production cost per unit is approximately $14.50. The specifications are straightforward. 39 ounces unloaded, 8.25 inches overall length, .45 caliber, 7-round magazine capacity. The first dramatic combat validation comes from an American officer named Lieutenant Francis Xavier Stretch in Nicaragua, 1928. Stretch leads a patrol tasked with locating Sandinista rebel positions in the jungle. His Marines carry Springfield rifles as primary weapons. The patrol encounters a Sandinista ambush at close range. The initial exchange of rifle fire is chaotic. Stretch's rifle is damaged. He transitions to his 1911 pistol. 7 rebels emerge from the jungle at ranges of 5 to 15 meters. Stretch fires 13 rounds from his pistol, dropping his empty magazine and reloading once during the engagement. The weapon doesn't jam, doesn't misfire, doesn't fail. All 7 attackers are neutralized. Stretch's patrol completes its mission. He receives recognition for his actions, though the official reports don't emphasize that a sidearm, not a rifle, proved decisive in the engagement. Modern forensic analysis of the site, conducted decades later, recovers shell casings that ballistic examination confirms as 45 ACP fired from a 1911 pattern pistol, validating Stretch's account. Stories like his spread through the Marine Corps. Soldiers who had been skeptical of the new semi-automatic become converts. The 1911 becomes synonymous with combat power. Officers who had clung to their revolvers begin requesting the new pistol. The weapon's reputation grows with each engagement. Then comes the First World War. The demand for 1911 pistols is staggering. Colt cannot produce them fast enough. The War Department contracts with manufacturers who have never built firearms before. Remington Rand, a typewriter company, begins producing 1911s. North American Arms Company, which makes railroad equipment, starts manufacturing slides and frames. Springfield Armory ramps up production. By the war's end, Remington Rand has produced over 900,000 pistols. Colt has manufactured approximately 400,000. Total production exceeds 2.7 million units. The wartime variants feature simplified machining to accelerate production. Checkering is reduced. Finishing is expedited, but the core design remains unchanged. The pistol that emerges from a typewriter factory functions identically to the pistol that emerges from Colt's dedicated firearms facility. The weapon performs across unimaginably diverse environments. It works in the frozen forests of the Argonne. It works in the burning deserts of Mesopotamia. It works in the steaming jungles of the Pacific. It works. German soldiers begin using captured 1911s, preferring them to their own Luger pistols in close combat situations. The weapon's reputation for reliability becomes legendary. A soldier might not trust his rifle, might not trust his equipment, might not trust his rations, but he trusts his 1911. The Second World War sees even greater production numbers. The pistol serves with every branch of the American military. Officers carry it. Tank crews carry it as their primary weapon in the confined spaces of armored vehicles. Pilots carry it in shoulder holsters, a survival weapon if they're shot down. Paratroopers carry it, needing a reliable sidearm when they land in enemy territory. The contracts expand further. Ithaca Gun Company, Singer Sewing Machine Company, Union Switch, and Signal Company all begin producing 1911s. Singer manufactures only 500 units before shifting production to other war materials, making their 1911s the rarest and most collectible variants. By 1945, total production exceeds 2.6 million additional units. The weapon continues through Korea, where the frozen Chosun Reservoir tests every piece of equipment. The 1911 functions in temperatures that freeze other weapons solid. It serves in Vietnam, where the heat and humidity destroy less robust designs. The mud of the Mekong Delta, the jungle moisture, the rough handling, the 1911 endures it all. When the military officially adopts the Beretta M9 as the new standard sidearm in 1985, many assume the 1911 service life has ended after 74 years. The assumption proves wrong. Special Operations Forces never abandon it. Delta Force continues carrying 1911s. Navy SEALs request customized variants. Marine Force reconnaissance units maintain it in their armories. When absolute reliability is required, when stopping power cannot be compromised, these elite units choose the 1911. The pistol serves in the Gulf War. It deploys to Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2012, more than a century after its adoption, the U.S. Marine Corps awards a contract for new 1911 pattern pistols to equip Marine Special Operations Forces. Photographs from recent conflicts show senior commanders still carrying 1911s. A photograph from 2017 shows a Marine officer in Syria with a 1911 in a hip holster. The pistol has been in continuous military service for 106 years at that point. It has engaged enemies in the Philippines, Nicaragua, both world wars, Korea, Vietnam, Grenada, Panama, Somalia, the Balkans, Iraq, and Afghanistan. No other combat handgun in history can claim this record of continuous service across more than a century of warfare. Manufacturing continues worldwide. Colt still produces 1911s. So does Springfield Armory, Kimber, Smith & Wesson, Remington, Ruger, Dan Wesson, Wilson Combat, Les Baer, and dozens of smaller manufacturers. The original patents expired decades ago. The design is public domain. Anyone can build one. The state of Utah recognizes John Moses Browning with a commemorative statue. Civilians purchase 1911s today, buying a design that is more than 110 years old, and they do so because the weapon shows no signs of obsolescence. The ergonomics remain excellent, the stopping power remains formidable, the reliability remains legendary. Production numbers are staggering. Official military procurement exceeds 5.3 million units. Commercial production likely exceeds 10 million units. The total number of 1911 pattern pistols manufactured worldwide may exceed 15 million. Why does it endure? The answer lies in 4 elements: function, reliability, ergonomics, and stopping power. Browning understood in 1911 something that remains true today. Complexity is the enemy of reliability. The 1911's operating system is mechanically simple. The short recoil operation uses only the energy already present in the firing cycle. There are no gas systems to foul, no complex linkages to break. The weapon has generous tolerances. It functions when dirty. It functions when damaged. The large heavy slide continues to cycle even when fouled with mud or sand that would jam a more precisely fitted mechanism. The 45 ACP cartridge remains formidable. Modern ammunition science has developed rounds with better penetration, better expansion, better performance against body armor. The 9mm cartridge offers higher capacity in the same size frame, but the 45 ACP's energy transfer creates a wound channel that remains devastating. The large slow bullet dumps its energy into the target rather than over-penetrating. The temporary cavity it creates causes massive tissue disruption. Modern weapons have advantages. The Glock 17 holds 17 rounds compared to the 1911's 8. Modern polymer frames reduce weight. But when absolute reliability is required, when stopping power cannot be compromised, when a weapon must function after being buried in mud, frozen solid, or baked in desert heat, many professionals still choose the 1911. The proof lies in the numbers. After 113 years of service, after tens of millions of rounds fired in every environment from Arctic tundra to equatorial jungle, the weapon has proven one thing beyond any doubt. It works. Some weapons are revolutionary, some are reliable, some are elegant. The 1911 is all three. It was supposed to cost $15 and serve for perhaps a decade before being replaced by the next innovation. Instead, it became immortal. John Moses Browning died in 1926, believing his pistol design was merely one of many contributions to firearms development. He could not have known that more than a century later, soldiers would still carry his creation into combat, that his design would outlast every competitor, that the weapon he sketched in a Utah workshop would become the longest-serving combat handgun in military history. The 1911 refuses to become obsolete because Browning designed it without compromise. He understood that a soldier's sidearm must work when everything else has failed. It must fire when covered in filth. It must function when frozen or overheated. It must stop an enemy with absolute certainty. Every decision Browning made prioritized these requirements over convenience, over cost, over ease of manufacture. The result is a weapon that has traveled an improbable distance from the volcanic soil of Jolo Island to the mountains of Afghanistan. More than a century later, the pistol is still going to war. It remains in service because it remains effective. And it remains effective because John Moses Browning built it right the first time.